Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Critical Miss. Last time we left you, Drekus had just killed a lich. They found their way to the center of the temple, and they killed the lich. The critical crew finds their way back to Vallon. They take the skull. They're still debating whether or not they're going to split credit with the other group, but ultimately they decide to take the credit for themselves. Vallon awards them with the prize. The other group is not seen again. They do requisition a tower to be built to have a foothold in the city. But when the crew goes to pay for the construction crew, they find their bank account completely empty. It seems that Vallon had betrayed them. Also, while at the bar, they saw the dwarven prince Xanon Ironhelm being taken away on a boat, bound and tied up, ship headed south. They explain the situation about the money and the prince to Captain Namor, and he agrees to take them south to a Rosarin because he's on his way back to Grayhawk anyway. Now this makes Roland uneasy, of course, being that he's going to Grayhawk, but he takes the ride. As the crew arrives at a Rosarin, they notice there's no formal docks or towns about. In fact, they just see forest. They just see rampant jungle. They had to anchor the ship offshore and swim to the beach due to pointed rocks. They soon find themselves surrounded by anthropomorphic turtles and monkeys who take them prisoner and bring them back to a small village of more anthropomorphic animals. They meet Old King Kam, a giant toad with a crown made of driftwood. They also meet Bafar, a jaguar who is an envoy and works with and negotiates between the four major animal clans on the island. The animals have no idea about the world outside of their island, and when the gang informs them that their land is disputed between other governments, they have no idea what they're talking about. The only disputes they currently know is the ones between the clans. The crew pleads with the king, who allows them safe sanctuary within their camp in exchange for the crew fighting with his clan against a rival clan who they believe is sending troops to them. The crew is here looking for Prince Xanon Ironhelm, searching frantically for anywhere where the dwarven prince could be. Lo and behold, shortly after the crew discovers the southern clan marching an army north towards the village, Scorn, Drekus, and Dars Agur gather up as many of the fighting animal allies as they are able to, including the infamous warrior known as Jalopy the Useless, a sloth who can barely even stay awake, even when a battle's going on. They decide to split the party, as you do, and they send these three staying with the village, and they send Rovan and Roland by themselves to the southern clan stronghold, a pyramid off in the distance. Using sound strategy and careful positioning, the three, Relic, Drekus, and Dars Agur, are able to hold off an invading army with the help of their animal allies as well. But after the army is defeated, behind them walks a giant stone Megazord-type machine. Piloting this machine, after a while of looking through it, was none other than Relic's brother, Convert. They stop fighting and reminisce about their uncle Frugal. All the while, Roland and Rovan decide to go to the pyramid while the army is headed north. They try to hit them at their weakest point. The group kills the enemy's clan leader, and Roland finds his father in the pyramid. And it turns out, Rovan also finds his father in the pyramid. But could it be? That father is one and the same. Roland and Rovan are revealed to be half-brothers. Roland is irrationally angry at this man at all times, and he threatens to kill him on every occasion that he gets. They also find a shadowy figure stealing a large, magical gem from the top of this pyramid, then disappearing. Roland recommends that they kill their father right there on the spot, but Rovan talks some sense into him, I suppose, gets him to come over to some of the light side, if you will, brings him back to camp, where Rovan and Roland are getting to know their father and why he left each of them individually, a little bit about each of their mothers. It's actually a rather happy time for them. They also discover, within the temple, while finding their father, they also discover the Dwarven Prince, plus a few of the Dwarven Prince's compatriots and bodyguards and other members of the Dwarven clan. Later that night, Rovan gets a suspicion, and he notices Convert leaving the camp. Relic and Convert don't sleep, being that they're both warforged, but Rovan still finds this rather suspicious. So he follows Convert, and he sees him talking to what can only be described as a dark, shadowy ghost. He doesn't mention anything to Relic for fear that he might be up to no good, but he does mention it to a few of the other group. Upon arrival back at the village, the crew spends another night, just relaxing, just getting through the next couple of days after the battle that had taken up the last week or so. The crew looks up. They see something flying overhead. It's enormous. It's bigger than any animal they've ever seen. They can't quite make out what it could be. Scorn calls upon his flying nimbus and flies up into the air and reveals that it is a ship. But how could it be a ship in the middle of the sky? The crew decides, well, we need to investigate. So Scorn flies back up on Nimbus. Roland and Rovan's father casts Fly on the rest of the group, so they are able to get up into the sky and onto the ship. Upon looking on the ship's deck, they notice that, well, these are guards. And these are not only any guards, these are guards from Grayhawk. This is a Grayhawk ship. Roland is infuriated and demands that they kill every last one of them. But, seeing that the odds were not in their favor, and we know how Roland feels about odds, they boarded the ship. After a few attempts at trickery and trying to get through the ship without being seen, the crew gets captured, except for Roland, who has a ring of invisibility. The crew gets captured and taken down into the cells. They meet a dwarven man, none they've met before, but an imposing man nonetheless. He challenges any one of them to a fight. Now, this is not a fight to the death. This is a fight in the pits. And the boat, the flying boat, has a pit that they fight in. They hold people in these cells not as prisoners, but as warriors, as gladiators to fight in the arena whenever they so please. And for their own entertainment, of course. But they're on their way to Tassa to have some of these competitors compete in the arena, the Death Ball arena that Tassa is known for. They're having a gladiator fight in a couple of days' time, and they want the best of the best to be representing Grayhawk. So they have a tournament on the boat. Each of them decide to compete in this bare-knuckle brawl tournament, where Relic challenges their new dwarven compatriot, whose they reveal the name to be Davron Declan Deathhammer III. But they just ended up calling him 3D3. Rovan decided to get involved as well, but being he was a monk, he was in an unfair advantage. However, so they put him against two opponents. One being Drekis himself. Roland even went up in a bare-knuckle brawl and actually won the fight. But the main event was yet to come. Roland wins his bare-knuckle brawl by face punches and ball punches. Rovan wins his fight against Drekis and a tiger. But then it was time for Relic versus 3D3. Now, Relic believed he was stronger than any man, especially a mortal man with fleshy, puny dwarf like this one, but this dwarf proved to be much stronger than he anticipated, and going down to the very last punch, 3D3 defeats Relic, and decides to challenge anyone that can defeat him to step forward. Relic gets lifted out of the pit, and Dars Agur steps forward. The next day, Dars Agur was set to fight 3D3. That night, Roland prays to Niku. Niku responds to him, and Roland has a pretty profound vision about what he should be doing going forward and how he is supposed to change and get more on the good side and try to help his friends succeed. Relic also has a vision about his particular deity, Thor. But this vision is much more clear, much more real. Relic has a vision that he's sitting at the head of a table in Valhalla with all of these amazing warriors, with all of these glorious weapons and beautiful armor, amazing people. And as he goes, he senses hunger for the first time in his life, and he reaches out his hand and he sees a fleshy hand. It's not made of stone. He reaches his own body and he feels himself squishy and fleshy and no longer made of stone. He reaches for one of the silver plates and he brushes all the food off of it, and he looks into it, and he is a human with long, flowing, dark blonde hair. Thor has bestowed this upon me, he thought. But soon he would find out that he was only here at the behest of Thor for one reason. He drags him to the front of the hall where everybody can see him, and he scorns Relic, and he tells them that he is no longer Relic, for he is not a treasure hunter, for he is barely even a warrior at all. After losing all of these fights, he can't even call himself a true warrior. From now on, he will no longer be called Relic. He will be known as Scorn. And from there, when Scorn opened his eyes next, he was back in his warforged stone form. But around all of his body was markings, shame markings from Valhalla. So everybody that saw him would know that he is that he has been shamed from Valhalla, and he is no longer welcome in the heaven of warriors. From there, the crew landed in Tassa, quickly hiding before they got seen by anybody that may be reporting to Vallon. They escaped, going east, headed towards Shamross, trying to find any semblance of a friend or somebody that can explain anything to them that was going on. They find the throne room of the king, King Flavian von Adderschwazl. They walk into the throne room, and they find Flavian von Adderschwazl, head in hand, disappointed, sad, not knowing what to do, which way is up. And they ask him what's going on, and he explains to them that his son has been brainwashed by the one called Vallon, and he doesn't know what to do. He suspects Vallon is something that he cannot even describe. He suspects Vallon may be something non-human. The group agrees to gain them more strength and to go back to Tassa and save the prince, or if not, at least destroy Vallon, because Vallon has taken over Tassa and basically has more power than the king at this point in the country of Loram. Soon, the crew would find that it was time to return to Tassa to at least gain some intel, to try to find out what's going on. What could Vallon be, if not human? And as it turns out, Asuro was just trying to get them to kill him so that his soul could escape and go back to its body, Vallon himself. Vallon became a stronger lich than any one of them could have conceived, and he was taking over the city with undead everywhere. And the more they killed, the stronger his army became. He had absolute power within the city. But the crew saw a few warriors banding together to fight back. Okay, so this is the part where I lose my announcer's voice for a second because I have to explain to you something out of character. So in our game, a lot of the guys wanted to try playing multiple characters, so we actually introduced a second batch of characters for each of them, and that's where this new group of people in Tassa came from. We had to figure out a way of them joining up with the first original Crusaders. And so they have new characters. That'll be explained more at the end of the video, what's going on with that. But as of right now in the story, Christian, his new character's name was Boris Galeheart, but everybody called him Thunder. And that was his, that's pretty much what people call him now. So when you hear people refer to Thunder, that's who they're talking about. And he is a sword mage. I believe he's a human. Something like that. He has divine roots, but I don't remember the exact story off the top of my head right now. Sean actually was retiring Rovan, and he as 2 new characters, one of which is still around, one of which we'll get to as we go. Shaggy Scooby, who is a hill dwarf druid, and Reed, who is a gnome or halfling, I don't remember which one, bard. Reed Silvertongue, something like that. I don't. The last names are going to bother me because I can't remember them. But those are his 2 new characters. Burwell, his new character was named Armis. Nope, sorry. Burwell's new character was named Artemis. He wanted to try playing a girl, see how that went. So Artemis was a female ranger, human. She is actually the daughter of Maros Araway, so it's Artemis Araway. Let's see. Tom decided to try a tiefling wizard, invoker wizard, so he's a fire mage. His name is Kazis. And then we have Beatty, who decided to try out an archer as well. I believe it was a seeker type archer or an arcane archer, or something along those lines. And his name was Rainer Reptar. Just Rainer, for purposes of not calling him Reptar the whole time. So those new characters, plus we added a new member to the game. His name was Chris. He's not playing in the game anymore, but just to introduce you to the characters that were there for a little bit. His character was named Ren, and he was a human shadow monk. Alright, so with that, back to the story. So the Clashing Crusaders were staying in a castle called Castle Starcade, which was awarded to them by King Flavian von Otterschwazel himself in exchange for them helping to save Tassa. However, not all of them wanted to go back to Tassa right away. In fact, a lot of them wanted to keep training and keep going on other missions so they can get stronger and take down the Lich, because they didn't believe they could fight the Lich on their own right now. But Dars Agur had a vision from his pantheon of deities, telling him to go to Tassa. That is where they will find all the help they'll need. So he goes to Tassa on his own, and a hero emerges when all of these people are fighting to survive, and they're stuck in the middle of Tassa trying to get out, trying to do anything to survive and escape. But Dars Agur steps forward, and he steps right into the face of a Dracolich. The Dracolich rears back its head, and right before Dars Agur is about to be blown away by this hot blue and white lightning breath that has taken down buildings already, Dars Agur looks to the group in the middle of the town square and says, "Find Castle Starcade and tell them I died as I lived. Stupid." His words, not mine. And the Dracolich explodes, this blue and white heat lightning breath that evaporates and incinerates Dars Agur himself. Nothing left but a pile of ash. The remaining warriors fight their way out, and they get to the bridge, and they escape Tassa. They make their way east to find Castle Starcade and break the news to the critical crew that Dars Agur was dead. After a period of mourning, the crew decided in order to honor Dars Agur, they had to keep fighting. They had to keep getting stronger and avenge him by taking down that Dracolich. But first, an opportunity presented itself to go to a remote island and fight in this tournament exclusive only to notable groups within the area. Now, they didn't want to back down from a challenge, but also the grand prize was quite a sum of money that they could use, because they didn't have any from Vallon screwing them over earlier. So, Roland, 3D3, Scorn, Reed, all go to this island where they are put into basically a Hunger Games type situation. On the way there, they are boated over to the island, and on the boat, 3D3 meets a woman named Kerrigan. She lies about her name at first, but he finds out soon enough. They, have a good time in the cabin. But we find out soon that she is the leader of an enemy group known as the Rising Tide. and she has entered the tournament as well. And she was just spying on us to try to find out what we knew and what we were weak against. The tournament begins, and we are put into a biodome situation where every sliver of this dome was a different terrain, a different temperature, a different climate that we had to adapt to, and we had to go through each of the different climates and find a specific item to help us into the Twisted Tower. Notable highlights: you were allowed to fight people from other groups, and if you knocked them out, you actually earned points. And the higher points you earned, the more likely you were to finish the tournament and win the grand prize. Needless to say, the Critical Crew, the Clashing Crusaders, they took down as many enemies as they could within the given time frame. Some other notable highlights from this: they find a weapon that is able to cut through anything that is immobile. Roland decides to try it out and asks 3D3 to swing the weapon at his arm that he is going to hold perfectly still, and he severs Roland's arm off. Yes, you heard that correctly. Luckily, we were able to mend it back together. So Roland doesn't have one arm anymore. He has two. But that was a thing that happened. Anyway, moving forward. When we arrive at the Twisted Tower, us being one of the only teams left, but we are one person extra because we are taking Kerrigan with us. So it's the Clashing Crusaders plus Kerrigan going towards this twisting tower. As we arrive at the top, we find that the item that we were supposed to retrieve was a dragon's egg, an unhatched dragon's egg. However, the enemies that we were fighting, the dark ones, the cursed ones, they had already arrived. And they threatened us, if we didn't hand them the dragon's egg, that we would all be cursed and killed. The Critical Crew is never ones to back down from a challenge. They were not about to flinch here. They stood tall and handed over the dragon's egg. As they were walking out, the cursed ones were walking out with the dragon's egg, Roland said, "Wait, you forgot something." And he fires his pistol, his last remaining bullet, and he shatters the dragon's egg in his hand. The crew escape with their lives, but just barely, and they escape and back to the tournament headquarters, where they meet the man in charge of the tournament, where they berate him and call him names and demand the grand prize, even though they didn't technically win, but they technically did. It was very confusing. We got some of the prize.
And then, out of nowhere, a spaceship seemingly the size of 3 of the Clashing Crusaders' houses, or castle, floats down from above, and first it looks like it's going to crash into the castle, but upon further inspection, it's just landing, and it's just very scary. So it lands peacefully next to the castle, still very intimidating, and the Clashing Crusaders approach. And in wonderful fashion, the commander of the ship comes out and punches the first crusader he sees in the face. Which would normally instigate a fight, but of course that's what the DM wanted. So they peacefully punched him back in the face and said hello. And then they initiated the conversation, because that's just how the enemy, or the invaders, said hello. And they're greeted by the trusty Paco, Commander Ironclad, and who's the third guy?
It was a girl.
Yeah.
I don't remember.
And some third girl who wasn't really part of it. She kind of just went off and died anyway.
Hey,
yeah.
I tried to save her.
Yeah.
Wow.
But, so the invading ship and Commander Ironclad and Paco and Random Girl recruit the Crusaders and request their aid in defending their hometown, or home planet. In which case, the Crusaders did not understand the concept of a planet, so that took about 3 episodes to film. About 3 episodes worth to explain, and we just decided to disagree and call them a different plane. So we went to the different quote-unquote plane of I forgot the name of the planet. It was a different planet. They flew to the different planet, and they need to invade this place called, and this is totally original, Halo. Now, this new ring world called Halo was apparently home to this ancient technology that could spell ruin for the universe, or the existing plane, as they understand it. So the Clashing Crusaders help Commander Ironclad in invading Halo and stopping, again, totally original idea, the Flood, from infecting all of the living creatures in the known universe and destroying it from the inside out. Long story short, a lot of things happen along the way. No one important died. Okay, someone important died. One of the first deaths in a long while, the great hero 3D3. Upon invasion of the Halo ring world and attacking, the enemy Covenant, who was also contesting the ring world.
And totally original.
Totally original.
If you think you've heard it before, you haven't. Shut up.
So in this three-way trifecta battle, there was a casualty. There was a trap laid in the Halo, a test for these warriors that they needed to go through. And there was a hole in the ground that said something along the lines of, the dead lie here.
Yeah.
So, of course, the first instinct for any reasonable individual is to go in that hole and close it.
And mark his name at the bottom.
Yes, and write his name in the hole at the bottom.
Carve it.
Carve it. Literally emphasis on carve it. Like, he was determined. He wanted to make a statement.
It's still there.
And a statement he did. Quickly, the Crusaders realized this may not have been the smartest idea and lifted up the hatch of the trap. And of course, 3D3 was nowhere to be found. The Crusaders then ventured up through the trap and passed the test. Unfortunately, the tests, they were given a path. They could either go rescue their friend, who was presumably dead, maybe not, they weren't sure, or they could save the known universe. And they chose the logical answer of save their friend. So they plunged into the darkness. 3D3 was going through his own trial at this point, and he refused to be taken over by the beast that was in charge of Halo, I guess would be the best way to put it. He was in a struggle between the beast, being controlled by it, or dying to it. 3D3 is not one to be controlled, so he said, in short term, fuck you to the beast, died, and granted his allies one last boon.
He got a boon?
Yes, a boon.
What was the boon?
There was a bomb they had brought with them, to blow up the Halo, which was out of energy. And the way they were going to save the universe was to charge the energy in the bomb by choosing the other path that they did not take. But 3D3's heroic spirit fueled the bomb that they had brought, and thus, after a long battle and some catchy last words that I don't remember by 3D3, they recharged the bomb, dropped the bomb, and escaped with Paco and Commander Ironclad. And then they returned back home.
And found a lot more zombies.
Yes, one of them being 3D3 because they brought his body back home with them, and he was a walking zombie for a while. No one understood why they wouldn't just let him die in peace, but...
I never mentioned Burwell's character.
Grimm is also there.
Right.
A necromancer who is short-lived because he's already not here anymore.
Yeah, Burwell didn't like him very much, so he's not worth mentioning other than he brought 3D3 back as a zombie for a little bit.
Just to play with our emotions.
Hey, sport fans, Beanie here. What? Stop throwing your arms all over the place. Anyway, I'm here to kind of catch you up to speed to a significant event that happened in our campaign.
There's ice chunks in the Sprite. Wait, I'm sorry. I forgot.
Oh, yes, the grand tundra of the chunks of ice Spriteland.
I'll take it.
I got nothing. When we were on the continent of Lorum, horrible, horrible things happened. Stop making funny faces. I'm losing my concentration. Horrible things happened in the ways of skeletons, the undead, and all sorts of death was rising in the continent of Lorum. The city of Tassa held a lich of untold power. One we had not killed yet, but we thought killed, and he kind of was still alive, but in Tassa. King Flavian von Otterschwazel came to us in need, begging us to gain what's the word? Favor of the other continents?
Yeah, assistance.
Assistance, yeah, sure.
Because we're all gonna die.
So, of course, Clashing Crusaders came to his aid by sending Raynor, my character, to Millstone to Bernius Sanderson, the great leader of a modern civilization known for their firearms and more firearms.
Totally original.
He kind of gave a, meh, we'll see in a few weeks maybe. Roland and Thunder went to Elros to beg the Shields of Justice for aid, and the Shields of Justice said, sweetenly, if you give us a castle somewhere. Oh, and a nice one too.
Oh, specifically on their mortal enemy's island, or give them ours.
Yeah, that, well, didn't work out so well. But they did get a nice shiny castle, namely ours. That was at Craghammer? No. It was at a place that was nearby, of which is unimportant. Our other members, Artemis and I believe Grim at the time, went to Zakar to beg the goblins for aid. The goblins actually agreed for some strange reason. Goblins being goblins would usually just kill on sight. But Artemis gave her case, pledged her life, and the goblins sent 10,000 strong to the aid of Tassa. What with all our requests sent to the multiple continents surrounding Tassa, not Thassa, Lorem, I keep making that mistake. We met with General Janlin, where we put together a plan to lay siege to Thassa, kill the Lich, and lay claim to the continent of Lorem, ridding all of the undead. Problem was, there was a Dracolich in the way. And a very apparent Dracolich at that. Our Clashing Crusaders went by water, wasn't it? Went by water. With many different goblins and, no, with many Shields of Justice, who were able to give much helpful healing. Not enough healing so much to save Raynor's life. Where a Dracolich had lightninged him and sent a crumbling building to his death. He was in a crumbling building. Crumbled onto him. He died. That's what really mattered. But you know who else who died? A fucking Lich. So that's 2 Liches, bitch. Well, kind of 1 Lich because it was the same Lich. But you get the story.
Bitch.
And with that, one of the greatest campaigns. Oh, was I about to end that? Because there is more. With the very killing of the Lich, our Clashing Crusaders were transported through time and space to meet with... God damn it, I have a terrible memory. What were they called? The Force?
The Source?
The Source, yes.
We don't talk about that now.
Oh yeah, we're not supposed to. I'm not even sure if I'm supposed to be telling you about the Source.
Should we be talking about the Source?
I guess.
Yeah, that's all right. And the Source filled us in on a new journey. They basically gave us a pat on the back and said, "Hey kid, nice job taking care of that Lich." Don't say it was 2 Liches because it was only 1. But they did fill us in.
Why would you say 2?
Well, there was the Lich that Kazas kept saying, but no.
Dracus, you mean? And that's the same one, because when you killed it in that place, it just released its soul.
And was actually because we didn't destroy the phylactery.
Yep.
Bless you.
Exactly. And so the Source made up of very familiar members of a prior campaign.
1 familiar member.
All right, 1 familiar member. Take a guess who. It's Dan.
I don't know.
It's Dan.
I've forgotten.
And they filled us in that, hey, great job saving a continent. We kind of got a problem here. We need you to save the world. And we're like, all right, we'll help out. Oh, and by the way, don't tell anybody, bye! And they sent us right back to Thassa, where we were there the whole time.
Whole time.
Shields of Justice kept asking us, guys, where did you go? You just disappeared. Nope, here whole time.
Whole time.
Whole time.
Whole time.
Whole time?
Fuck the orcs. Wait, damn it.
And that
Almost.
was the time the Clashing Crusaders saved all of Lorem from the undead.
The whole time.
Easy peasy.
Whole time.
Okay, guys, so it's almost impossible to get everybody together when we're not playing to record this stuff, the story so far. So I'm just going to kind of give you the rest of the rundown. It's only a little bit more, mainly because I want to get this out so I can start putting the episodes out. So anyway, after they defeated the Lich and Tassa was free of its undead burden, the city and the rest of the country were still trying to rebuild itself. They were called away to Makalania, a southern continent, where orcs were running rampant. It seemed that an orc clan had taken control of almost all of the major cities, and the last one surviving was the capital called Via Purifico. So the crew was sent down there, and they attacked and defeated this place called Blackrock Spire, which was an orc stronghold, and they also saved the king and prince who were kidnapped from there. In return, or in exchange for saving them, the king warranted them, or granted them, I should say, a secondary castle. When they went to check the castle out, however, it turns out it was nothing more than a broken tower in the swamp, in the middle of nowhere. They weren't greatly happy with that, but whatever. They still have a secondary place to live. So the crew starts cleaning it out because it hasn't been furnished in quite some time. It is just really mostly rusted metal and broken wood, rotten wood and gross shit. Looks like animals probably lived there for a while. So in the clearing just outside of this new tower, Shaggy decides to commune with nature, to try to get to know his area, to see if there's any fresh water nearby, anything, any strange animals native to the land, stuff like that. So he communes with nature, and he gets to ask 3 questions. He asks if there's any fresh, clean water nearby within, I forget how long it is, like a 3-mile radius or whatever. The answer is no. And then he asks if there's any animals or something like that, I don't remember. And there's a lot of animals nearby, mostly what you'd normally find in a swamp, like snakes and such. And then he's like, well, that's all the really questions I had. I guess I'll just throw away my 3rd question, because one of the questions that he's allowed to ask is, are there any alternate dimensions nearby? Or influences from other dimensions nearby? And as luck would have it, this was totally planned out beforehand, and I had, in the basement of the tower, hidden away, was a portal to a different plane. A different plane of existence, different dimension, or however you want to say it. So, randomly, he decides to ask this question. Because, Sean and his luck, right? So he goes ahead and he asks the question, and I say, yes, there is, actually. And everyone went, wait, what? Are you kidding? Oh my god, what? So yeah, so that happened. They immediately decided, oh my god, we have to go check out this other dimension. Oh my god, we gotta go. No research done in classic Clashing Crusaders fashion. They do no research, and they clear out, they go down into the tunnel, and Shaggy jumps right through the portal, where he proceeds to fall. Because turns out the portal that leads into what he finds out is the Shadowfell, or my version of the Shadowfell. At least it's not the exact Shadowfell from the books, but it's my version of it. He starts falling about 400 feet, 500 feet, something like that. I forget exactly what it was. It was like 300 to 400, maybe somewhere around there. And because he's Shaggy, he turns into a giant bat, and he lands safely, no problem. And he explores, and he finds out that dwarves are really not welcome here, because there are Duragar who will enslave the dwarves. He's not a big fan of this process, naturally, and he leaves, and he pretty much goes on a solo exploration mission for what appears to be weeks, and then eventually the rest of the Clashing Crusaders decide, well, we have to go back after him. We have to. Oh, I'm sorry. Before that happened, while they were deciding, they went back to Via Purifico to have a meeting with the Brotherhood of the Blade, because they still had to live up to their promise to put a castle from the Shields of Justice on Blade Isle, which is the only island they don't have a base on. Well, they didn't approve, naturally, but in order to get the meeting, I'm sorry, I keep going back and forth, I don't have any of this written down, before they could get the meeting, they had to have a one-on-one battle to the death. And if they won, then they were granted a meeting with Blade himself. Blade is the leader of the Brotherhood of the Blades. So Scorn naturally steps up, and he goes down to about 2 hit points, and he does just enough, like literally 1 point over the enemy's hit points on his last swing of his axe, and takes him down. To which they have the meeting. They ask if they can put the castle on the Blade Isle. They would build it and everything like that, no problem. And Blade says absolutely not. There's no shot in hell of that happening. And they also notice on Blade's hip was one of the Echoes of Divergence, one of those items that they've been searching for. They decide it would be better to not ask about it, other than they said, "What is that?" And he said, "Don't worry about it," pretty much. So they know where one of those is. Also, I'm sorry, and I keep going back and forth. During the attack on the Blackrock Spire, Scorn actually found a new item, another Echo of Divergence, which was the Mountain Breaker Knuckles, which was worn by Kreen, which was Dars Agur's father. And he now has those. So, and you'll notice as we go, he's extremely strong now, and yeah. Anyway, moving forward, after the meeting with the Brotherhood of the Blade, they all go, and they decide to jump through the portal. All 5 of them. Yeah, all 5 of them. They come crashing down, and because they don't have shape-shifting powers, 3 of them go down, go unconscious. There's only 2 left that are not down, and that was Dine, who was a player that we don't play with anymore, but he had a character named Dine, who was a Dragonborn, and Scorn, because he's a bucket of hit points. So they are alive, and because of the massive noise that they were creating and the light that they were creating, they drew in a couple of creepy crawlies. These little monsters end up killing Dine, taking him down to 0 and continuously eating him, causing him to lose his 3 death saves. So Dine dies next to Scorn as Scorn crushes the rest of these bugs with his hammer. So they explore through the Shadowfell through a series of unbelievably lucky rolls, and because it's Sean, of course, they were extremely lucky rolls. They meet up with Shaggy. Then they go into this city in the Shadowfell where they find that most of these people are actually pretty nice. Nothing bad is actually happening right now, so it's pretty good. Long story short, they find a scroll that they purchase because the shop that has the scroll, they don't actually know really what they have. They just know that it's powerful. So they purchased the scroll by selling a lot of their expensive items, because the scroll was, I believe it was 50,000. When it's not recorded, I don't remember any of these things. I should write this stuff down though. So they purchased the scroll, and Shaggy soon finds out that it's a wish scroll, and he's the only one that can use it because he was the first one to open it. Eventually, they decide to try it out and to wish that Shaggy was strong enough to get them out of here. Because once a druid becomes a certain level, he can learn the spell Plane Shift, and he can get them all out of Shadowfell, which they've been stuck in, by the way. We had about 2 months in the Shadowfell of them just hunting boulettes and trying to not die, fighting in the pits. It was a big shit show. So they go into a hotel room, a hotel of which they've been staying in for a while, and they start reading, or Shaggy starts reading the scroll. So I like to do a little fun thing when the scroll is too powerful for you, or a very, very powerful spell that you've never controlled before. I like to make it have, consequences. So he did roll well enough that the spell succeeded, but also while he was reading the scroll, a sphere of blue fire erupted around him and caused a gigantic sphere of fire to break a hole into the side of the hotel and almost collapse hinder the structural integrity of the hotel. So that was an issue for them because now they had to pay for the hotel also. And also, I forgot to mention, everything in the Shadowfell seems to be a lot more expensive, and they are not really sure why, but it seems to be. So after a lot of gathering money and doing odd jobs on the side and selling stuff, and they managed to get the money pretty quickly, and so they did pay back their debt. And Shaggy's now level 14. I think the highest level we have other than Shaggy is 10. That's all he wished to be, was strong enough to cast the spell, so he didn't want to, I guess, surpass everybody too much and just be like a god walking amongst men. So he continues on, and eventually they plane shift out, and they go back to the material plane, where they find that their castle has been taken over by the Shields of Justice because they were on a time constraint and they did not fulfill their end of the bargain, where they would get the castle on Blade Isle successfully. Let's see what else happened. Oh, and this ended up being about 2 months later that they returned. They were in the Shadowfell for about 2.5 weeks, and so time clearly moves a little bit slower down there. After they find out that the Shields of Justice take over their castle, they also found out that Roland and Artemis, who was another one of Burl's characters, I'm not sure if we mentioned her yet, Roland and Artemis were captured by the Order of the Cat's Eye, or not captured, but imprisoned, I should say. Callie actually accidentally... Oh, actually, that's where this episode starts off, so I won't get into that too much. The first episode starts off with Roland returning with Callie, and you'll kind of figure out, what happens with all of that. The rest of the crew is still trying to kind of figure out how the world looks now, like what's been going on in the world. So as they find out, you'll find out as well. I know that wasn't everything, and I know there's going to be some things mentioned that aren't specifically mentioned in this video, or that aren't super clear. We'll try to keep up with you guys as best as possible. If you have any questions in the comments, or if you have any questions, post them in the comments, and I'll try to answer them so we can keep everybody up to date. And you will be getting episodes pretty much every day, at least as far as I have them in advance. So you'll be getting episodes pretty much every day, so you can look forward to that, and we'll see you next time on The Critical Miss.